It's my nerd world. Glad you're here. This is a space opera podcast. I want to give you an update on the future of the podcast, why there hasn't been as many shows as I had hoped, and what I'm planning on doing with the podcast in the very near future. A quick review of The Midnight Sky, George Clooney's latest science fiction film, available on Netflix, which I quite enjoyed. I'll share my thoughts. And speaking of space operas, I got a brand new book coming out in my EMBARK science fiction space opera series this week. I'll give you details on that. Let's get to the show. Really, really glad you took the time to listen.
My Nerd World.
It is My Nerd World, a space opera podcast, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Glad you're with the show this week. Thank you for taking time to listen and download. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did recording it. You can email TalkShowNerd@gmail.com and always go to the website mynerdworld.net. So, listen, here's the deal. I have not done as many of the space opera podcast shows as I had hoped for a number of different reasons. The biggest reason being just time hasn't permitted between my full-time radio job, the writing of my science fiction novels, which I do because of my love of science fiction and space operas. Also, it's kind of my retirement plan, doing that thing with my fingers. And who knows how long I'm going to be able to be on the air, based off of what's going on in the world these days. But a lot of it just comes down to time. With the Star Wars podcast that I make sure to do every week, and everything else going on, including having two boys, right? And a busy schedule, the time hasn't permitted. And there hasn't been a lot of space operas coming out to talk about. So no excuse, but I wanted to give you an update on the show. I did want to mention, though, that I do have a plan for the Space Opera podcast in the future. And hopefully later this month, I can begin that plan. And that is to interview individuals involved in various space opera content creation. I already have scheduled for later in the month of January an interview with Tom Edwards of Tom Edwards Designs. Tom Edwards is the artist who has done all of the covers for my EMBARK series. He is an amazing artist. His ability to take my words and descriptions and turn them into the pieces and works of art that he does to adorn the covers of my space opera books. He is really, really just incredible. So hopefully I'll have a chance to, we kind of have a tentative plan to record an interview later in the month. And then I have a list of individuals that I really do hope that I can interview down the line. Particularly a lot of science fiction space opera authors. And I hope that will grow into, and the show will enable me the opportunity to speak to individuals involved in movie creation as well that have been involved in space operas. So that's the plan moving forward with the show. I don't want to guarantee the show will be coming out with any level of consistency, just simply because of my busy work schedule. But again, time permitting and schedules permitting, I hope to start filling the show up with interviews of individuals who are into science fiction and space operas, and to pick their brains a little bit. I do have a brand new book coming out in my EMBARK series that I want to talk about at the end of the show this week. But since there has been some science fiction content released, doesn't necessarily fall into the category of space opera. But, if you kind of loosen up the definition a little bit, you could fit it in there. The Midnight Sky, directed by George Clooney, came out a couple weeks ago. Watched it over my Christmas vacation, and I really enjoyed it. It's available on Netflix right now, and here's a little bit of the details from Yahoo Movies. Midnight Sky, George Clooney on how he captured the year's most shocking death scene and learning from failure. George Clooney, the article says, sits pretty comfortably in the upper echelons of Hollywood when it comes to a level of fame, success as an actor, and a respect from his peers, where he's found more of a mixed bag, though. He has been behind the camera as a director. He's had unqualified triumphs like Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, A Good Night, and Good Luck. He's also had some clunkers like Monuments Men and Suburbicon. And I'm pretty sure, I know he starred in, but didn't he direct Solaris? You know what? I should have checked that before I started the show, but I didn't, so my apologies. I know he's in it, right? His latest effort, the visually striking sci-fi drama The Midnight Sky, marks a definite high for Clooney, who also stars as a scientist desperately attempting to warn a returning spaceship that Earth has been rendered uninhabitable in the not-too-distant future. I really enjoyed this film. It's a slow burn. There's no doubt about that at all. It uses a plot element from, and I don't want to spoil anything for somebody that hasn't seen it yet, because I know it's been out now for several weeks, but if you're just now hearing about it for the first time and haven't checked it out, I don't want to spoil anything for you. There is a plot element in the film that is a direct copy, and I don't know which one was filmed first. But there is a plot element in the film that is exactly the same as a plot element of another recent film that came out that was a Christmas holiday film available on HBO Max. I don't want to say anything more than that. Maybe on the next show, if you've had time to watch it, I will mention what both films are. But we got about midway through the movie, and I realized what was happening, and I went, oh, that's interesting. They used the same plot element from that other film. He used it very effectively, don't misunderstand. It didn't ruin anything for me. I just thought it was an interesting little anecdote that this film ended up lifting one of its big revealing moments from another movie. But the film itself was very enjoyable. The story of George Clooney and a little girl on Earth trying to reach out to this spaceship returning from this habitable planet where the inhabitants of the spaceship are unaware of the disaster that has happened on Earth. Both the storylines in space with the ship, which was very reminiscent, in my opinion, of the ship we see at the very beginning of Avatar. Very much that long, stretched-out, modular type vehicle, which is cool. I mean, they try to stick more towards hard science. Both the plot elements worked very well, and I found both storylines very interesting. The set design work in the film was really compelling, too, because the vehicle itself on the outside and the inside, while at a first glance looks like your typical deep space, again, modular, lengthy ship, very reminiscent of what we saw in The Martian as well. It had a very organic feel to it, almost as if some of the framework had been grown, and I think they may even mention that they 3D printed it. So I think that was the rationale behind it. Had some similarities to After Earth, the Will Smith and his son M. Night Shyamalan film, which did not get great reviews, but I still quite enjoy. And actually wouldn't be a bad one for me to do on the Space Opera podcast. The end of the film is interesting, and I will say, without spoiling anything, that you need to go into it with the mindset that you're not going to get all the resolutions you may be looking for. This is the kind of film that drives my wife nuts because of that very, very reason. And there is, boy, I really wish, maybe I'll come back next week and do a full spoiler on it because I want to talk about it. And I'd be interested to hear, for those that listen to the podcast, what you think if you watched it or you watch it between now and next week. Maybe I'll come back and do another one back-to-back this week. Because the end of the film raises some really interesting questions based off of where the characters end up that are very challenging. So, and again, I'm dancing around the edges, but if you've seen the movie, I think you know what I'm talking about. Because it leaves some things open and the resolution isn't quite as clear as you would think. And again, it's very eye-opening and very interesting. So I definitely recommend it. If you like sci-fi, obviously you're listening to the Space Opera podcast, and you don't mind a movie that's a slow burn. It is on Netflix. I think if I had gone to see it in the theater, I may not have had enjoyed it nearly as much because I think our expectations get higher when we go to the theater. But to sit down at home and to just let the movie kind of wash over you, I really, really did enjoy it, and it's one that I would probably at some point down the line revisit. I enjoyed it that much. I don't think it's one that I would do a regular rewatch on like my beloved Star Wars films, but it's one that I would definitely go back and revisit, especially because of some of the more shocking reveals and the twists and turns that it takes. It's always interesting to me to go back and watch a film knowing its secrets ahead of time after you've already watched it. So, yeah, I give it, if we go, if we're going 5 stars, I'll give it a 3.5. A pretty solid 3.5. Right? Sounds solid. What do you think? TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. That is the email address. Let me know your thoughts. And again, maybe next week I'll do a spoiler review and we can talk about it a little further. All right. Before I let you go, and again, like I said, it's going to be a short podcast this week. I do want to promote the latest in my EMBARK series. EMBARK. The EMBARK adventure, Jon Corbijn and the Asteroid of Misfortune. This is a character that was introduced in EMBARK, The Vanishing War, Book 3. I intentionally put in a plot device in Book 3 so that I could write this story. If this story ends up being popular, I might write more spin-off Jon Corbijn stories, a la, Indiana Jones. But here's the back of the book blurb for those that aren't familiar with this story. It is available now as a pre-order. It comes out officially on Tuesday. If you go to Amazon.com, search for EMBARK, Jon Justice, you'll find it there. MyNerdWorld.net, there are details. You can buy the paperback right now. It is the least expensive of the books that I've written. It is the shortest of the books. It's a quick read at about 60,000 words. Because it is just a sort of a standalone side adventure. And it can be read as a standalone story. So if you have not read any of the other EMBARK books, this could serve as your entry point, even though it takes place after the first 3. So you read the story and go, oh, I'm really curious how everything that is said in the story plays out. You can go back you can go back and read the first 3 books. So again, it can be read as a standalone story or as book 4 in the EMBARK series, and it will serve as a bridge to the next trilogy of books 5, 6, and 7. So here's your back of the book blurb for Jon Corbijn and the Asteroid of Misfortune. Jon Corbijn, former musician turned intergalactic messenger, used to tour the world in his beloved ship, the 09. That was before the great evacuation of Earth sent countless humans into deep space to find a new home. With nowhere left to rock, Gon traveled between the populated planets with his sarcastic AI companion Alex, sending out communication drones for a price. During the Vanishing War, Gon and Alex on board the 09 are struck by the enemy, sending them hurtling uncontrollably through space. Now marooned on an asteroid, running low on fuel and oxygen are the least of their problems. Again, the book is out officially on Tuesday. You can buy the paperback right now at Amazon.com. Audiobook is finished and is pending approval from Amazon and should be available as soon as they approve it. So if you want to continue to support my Nerd World and the show, I hope you'll go and check the story out. It is very different from the first 3 books, in that the first 3 books are written in third-person omniscient. This is a first-person perspective book written from Jon Corbijn. Jon Corbijn's point of view, and it also is a bit of a comedy. And I designed it as such. It really is just sort of a fun romp, a fun space opera adventure. Again, think Indiana Jones in space, and you get the idea. So I hope you'll go and check it out. And if you have avoided buying the other 3 books, I hope you'll give this one a read, and hopefully be enticed to go and buy books 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3. Book 5 is finished. And that is the beginning of the next trilogy, and that'll be out at the beginning of March. I'm currently in the process of editing it, and I've already started on writing book 6. So books 5, 6, and 7 will all be out this year, and I'm really excited to get these stories out in short order. It's going to be a really exciting arc. And again, the Jon Corbijn story is the bridge to this next trilogy. So if you're planning on reading the other books, you definitely want to check out Jon Corbijn and the Asteroid of Misfortune. Amazon.com, search for Jon Justice or EMBARK, and get the ebook, paperback, or audiobook for all of the books. I really would appreciate it. Pick them up for you or a friend. All right, that wraps up a Space Opera podcast for this week. I'm heading to do the Star Wars podcast next, so if you're into Star Wars, that'll be available here very shortly. Thank you so much for checking out the show. As always, I hope you drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.
My Nerd World.